Hello again, I am Ninna I'm a psychologist, and yes, I am fat. I am the fat psychologist. I love who I am. In fact, I want everyone to love who they are. Queer or straight, fat or thin, whatever. Just be you. Saying this can sound easy, but doing it can be very hard. That's where this podcast comes in. So welcome to the Fat Psychologist podcast. In this season, I explore happiness at every size. I hope my journey can guide yours. I hope the journey of those guests who are coming in can help you in your journey. You can contact me to work together. Visit my website if you want to know more. And please follow me on Instagram, Threads, or Blue Sky. I would really appreciate if you follow the podcast wherever you listen. Be in touch. If you have questions, send them through and we will discuss them too. Inclusivity is at the heart of everything I do. Because of this, I capture every word with care and I edit the transcripts so everyone can access. You will find detailed transcripts on my website and wherever you're listening. I have checked them by hand, so hopefully that will be helpful to you. In today's episode, we will be thinking about diet culture, and particularly about diet culture as a religion. This was an idea brought to me by Amanda Martinez Beck, who is an author. Amanda was one of these first people who, when I just started the podcast, I put a note on Threads for people to come in, and she put her name forward. Just a little bit of background and why I was so interested when Amanda suggested thinking about diet culture as a religion. I have not talked about my religious beliefs so far in the podcast, but it might be worth knowing that I am a Catholic, not very much a practicing Catholic. I value every religion and anyone from any beliefs. If you want to talk about your own beliefs, spiritual beliefs, religions in the podcast, as long as it relates to the theme of happiness at every size, then you're very, very welcome. I don't tend to go to church. I used to. When I was 18, I used to go to church every day except Saturdays, because that was party day. Although in the UK, I have always been in a very inclusive church where genuinely everyone is accepted. I remember a long time ago, although I think the Catholic Church as a structure would frown upon this, I was giving communion, so being a minister of communion, while I was pregnant and not married, and the person next to me was a lesbian. I believe that God accepts us all as we are. If you have ever felt excluded by the church, I'm really, really sorry. And that's not the church I believe in. Maybe I'll do another episode on that at some point. I go to a pilgrimage every year called Pilgrim Cross. It's in the UK, and most of the groups or the people who go walk for 7 days to get to this little town called Walsingham. If you've never heard of it, it's where, in theory, the Virgin appeared. And what I love about this pilgrimage and the town is that, yes, it is Christian and it is very ecumenical. So people from Christian beliefs come. And I know many people who walk who don't believe in God anymore or ever have believed in God. I have been joining an online group for the pilgrimage, so I'm not even walking and I'm still welcome. And this group of people who join the pilgrimage are 9. Many of them are not able to join the walking pilgrimage because they are chronically ill. Being in this group of people who are amazing, and many of them have very, very limited mobility because of their illnesses, has been a huge learning point for me. Every single person I have met in that group is amazing. Just being. This has proven to me that I don't have to be anything. I don't have to achieve anything. I just have to be. And I value each of them individually so much. They're my rock. They're actually part of my life all the time. I studied theology in my first year of university in parallel to psychology. I couldn't make my mind up. Theology, maths, or psychology. And I ended up going for psychology and theology. My mom was not a Catholic. And my mom was very much, don't study theology, you'll just study Catholicism. She was right. I still really, really enjoyed it. And I only dropped it because it was too much on my plate. I couldn't do both. So I ended up choosing psychology. I also really wanted to be a priest growing up. But being a Catholic and being in Chile, I never knew that being a priest could be possible for women in other Christian religions. Priesthood was one of the many things that I gave up because women were not allowed to do it. It's not my path anymore, and I don't regret not doing it. But yeah, I also wanted to be a fighter pilot like my dad. And that didn't happen because, again, women wouldn't be fighter pilots. Fat women in particular, there's no way. I wouldn't fit in the plane probably. But I wasn't fat back then. I'm really, really pleased that currently there are women fighter pilots in Chile. But I digress. I became a Catholic quite late in life. Looking back, it was like my teenage rebellion. It's the lamest teenage rebellion ever. Part of why I became a Catholic, besides being in a Catholic country, was because I read the Chronicles of Narnia. I was a lot of a bookworm growing up. I would read everything that came across. But these books were really special to me because we found them in the supermarket, the first one. And then my grandma bought each one of them. And I felt so lucky that I was being bought books because it wasn't something that a lot of people thought a young girl should have. So Barbies, yes, books not so much. And looking back, I realized that the Chronicles of Narnia are a parable of Christianity. My growth in Christianity has a lot to do with those books. So the quote I'm going to start with today is from the Chronicles of Narnia. But any of you who are not super fans are unlikely to have read to the last book, which is called The Last Battle. And it's about, spoiler alert, the end of Narnia. There are a lot of things that C.S. Lewis got wrong. I think he was such a racist. However, it was quite nice that he had 2 kings and 2 queens, which is quite out of the time. From the book, it says, "Then he, Aslan, breathed upon me and took away the trembling from my limbs and caused me to stand upon my feet. And after that he said not much, but that we should meet again. And since then, O kings and ladies, I have been wandering to find him, and my happiness is so great that even weakens me like a wound. And this is a marvel of marvels, that he calls me beloved, me, who am but as a dog." And then I will have to read the next bit because if we're thinking about inclusion, there are things he did get right. It continues. "Hey, what's that?" said one of the dogs. "Sir," said Emeth, "it is but a fashion of speech which we have in Carloman." "Well, I can't say. It's one I like very much," said the dog. "He doesn't mean any harm," said an older dog. "After all, we call our puppies boys when they don't behave properly." "So we do," said the first dog. "Or girls." "Shh," said the old dog. "That's not a nice word to use. Remember where you are." I hope that we can start thinking about our language as well. If I say something that I need to correct because I didn't notice, let me know. I hope my language is inclusive. And I will only learn that through keeping talking to people that are different to me, that have different experiences. And it's super crazy how much Amanda and I have in common. Let's then listen to our conversation and think about how diet culture is a religion. It's so lovely to meet you, Amanda. I'm new in the fat liberation movement, although I should have got it much earlier. And I'm like, yes, I need to have a voice on this because it's really important. In the UK, it's not something that is talked about a lot, much more in the US, although I know it's bad times at any point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm excited. Yeah. I'm really excited to talk with you. I love to be able to talk about the work that I'm doing, and it's so nice to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. Would you like to start by introducing yourself to our audience?
Sure. My name is Amanda Martinez Beck, and I am 40 years old. I'm very proudly 40 years old. I have come through a lot, and 40 is going to be the beautiful decade, I can tell. I live in Texas, and I don't sound like that because I grew up in a home where my dad is from Cuba and my mom grew up all over the world as a military brat. so I don't have a strong East Texan accent. My day job is teaching Spanish at a local university here, part-time, and raising 4 kids with my husband. We have 4 amazing kids, and he is an English professor, and I am about to start seminary. I came into fat liberation work about a decade ago when I wrote a blog called To All the Fat Girls, and it got an incredible response. Normally, about 40 people viewed my blog, and over the course of 2 days, 1,600 people viewed my blog.
Oh my God, that's great.
So I was like, oh my goodness, I think I'm hitting on something. I think people need to know the goodness of their bodies and that our weakness is not something to be ashamed about. So it started me on a writing career. I wrote several articles and got a book deal, wrote my first book, which is called Lovely: How I Learned to Embrace the Body God Gave Me. I was Catholic at the time, so it's a very Catholic approach to all bodies are good bodies. It's still a lovely book. No, pardon the pun, that's the name of the book. But I'm still really proud of it. But I've deconverted from Catholicism since then. I'm still a Christian, but
Yeah, you wouldn't be going to be ordained as a Catholic, would you? Sorry,
that
I'm a
is
Catholic
right.
too, so people who are hearing, so I can say
Yes.
it as a Catholic.
Yes. I'm pro women's ordination and I want to be a priest. So I can't be Catholic anymore.
So what church are you?
I'm in an Anglican church, which is
Okay.
like Church of England,
Yep.
Episcopalian. They do have women priests. My journey there has been really interesting, but I'm writing a lot about diet culture as religion and how we break free from that. And my second book is more about that. It's called More of You: The Fat Girl's Field Guide to the Modern World. And it's a very practical guide, whereas Lovely was a very much more theological dive. More of You is how to have conversations with your doctors, how to stop the shame spiral when you're having body shame, how to fight for fat liberation. Now, my third book that I'm working on is How Diet Culture is a Religion. I've been all over the
I'm
place.
super. Yeah, I mean, I love that. And it's not all over the place because there's a theme clearly.
True.
And also, we're allowed to be over the place. Someone told me when I said my career's been all over the place. No, you have a portfolio career. I'm like, oh, that's a nice one.
Oh, I like that.
So yeah, it's a nice reframing, I think. What I really love, so for listeners that we've never met before, you were super kind when I put a post out going, who would like to come on my podcast? No one follows me yet. And you were like, I will. And I super appreciate that. And as I've started reading around about what you do and now hearing what you do, it's crazy how much we have in common.
Yes, say more about that because I know a little bit. We're both Catholic. We're both fat.
So both Catholic. I was born in Chile, so
Okay.
Latino mind-ish there.
Yes.
Spanish. I work at a university in my full-time job. I'm assistant professor in research methods.
Wonderful.
I'm also a lapsed Catholic, so I still do mass, but I mostly do whatever. So either Catholic or Anglican or whatever is useful on the day.
Okay.
Because I'm living in the UK currently. At the beginning, I didn't know which was which, and then genuinely, I think we all follow the same God, even other religions. So I'm really happy to go to celebrations from other religions, so they're very different.
Yes.
But I became a Catholic when I was around 16. That ritual of the Catholic Church, which is very similar in high Anglican churches, still feels very much a healing space.
Yeah.
Although there's some times when I just want to go, church, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And something I've never shared on the podcast yet, I actually have a sister who lives in Texas.
Oh, where in Texas
Yeah,
is
but
she?
that's a long story as well because it's a sister I've only met 3 times in my life.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So that's kind of load of things. A lot of my life, I suppose, is a common story on fat people. I just fought my body, and everyone told me I had to, and that's what I had to do. So this idea of diet culture, and when you link it to religion, I've been reading some of the things you've written. It just makes so much sense to me. And then probably 10 years ago, so I'm 47 now. So I was much older than when you started on this journey, I'm like, I'm being stupid. I just need to enjoy the body I have, and I'm there.
That's wonderful.
Also for our listeners, because they won't be necessarily seeing you, would you describe yourself physically as well?
Sure. I am in a fat body, and I'm sure you've talked about this before, but I use the word fat as a neutral descriptor. Like, my hair is brown, it's cut in a short cut, and I have a fat body. I wear glasses, and I have cat eye glasses. I always wear lipstick. Today I'm wearing like a raspberry color. And I'm also disabled, so I don't walk that great. I can walk, but a lot of times with the support of a cane or sitting down frequently. Today I'm wearing my shirt that I made. It says, "You are enough and you are not too much."
Yay! So. Very important messages for everyone who's listening, because I think those are two things that particularly women were told: either you're not enough, you need to change, or you're too much, you need to make yourself tiny.
Exactly. And I found the "you need to make yourself small" message growing up in Southern belle culture. So in the United States, the South has a specific culture where women are supposed to be demure and small-waisted, quiet, submissive, and I just was never any of those things. Also, growing up in a religious household, women were supposed to be quieter and not lead. Men were supposed to be the leaders. And breaking through with that, I am enough and I'm not too much.
Super. I was reading some of your entries in your Substack. I wonder if it's okay with you if I read you a little quote and you can tell us a bit about that.
Absolutely.
So I really like this one. So you have a post called "Sinners in the Hands of a Skinny God, a Parable for Today." And you start that when saying, "In the beginning, there was a God. And this God had the sleekest, trimmest body of all time. God created humans with bodies, and while they lived in God's organic garden, their bodies were perfect. No extra fat, just lean muscle, no pain or disease, just bodily bliss. God had just one rule: don't eat wrong." I mean, I loved it because it really resonates with the story in the Bible, which not only Catholics or Christians, but other religions will share in the Old Testament, although obviously not every religion.
Right.
What brought you to that retelling of the creation, I suppose?
I came up with this parable because there's a sermon from the 1700s in the American Great Awakening called "Sinners in the Hand of an Angry God." And it's about God dangling sinners over the fires of hell because of their actions. And so I thought, what if that God were skinny? Because I think a lot of people turn all of their efforts in their life towards thinness or ability, and they must have some sort of conception that God is pleased with them when they are skinny or able-bodied. But I don't think many people have ever actually thought about God having a body. And right in the Old Testament, in the Jewish scriptures, that story, God doesn't really have a body in the same way we think about bodies. But as a Christian, believing that Jesus died and rose again and ascended into heaven, Jesus has a body. And so
and then it's not only Jesus, because it's also the Father. So again, there's a body. A Father has a body.
Yeah.
It's not just like the Holy Spirit doesn't, but yeah.
Right. This idea of incorporated flesh, just playing with those ideas. I think religion is about playing and thoughtfulness and humor as much as it is about serious things. So I wanted to play with the idea of God having a body and getting mad at the humans for eating bread and getting chubby. So that's where that idea came from.
And that's where the parable takes you, doesn't it? Rather than eating the apple, you're eating something that wasn't allowed, and then we're going out onto this world where we go fat and we're bad. We're sinners because we're fat.
Exactly. You know, my friend Nicole Morgan, she wrote a great book called Fat and Faithful: Learning to Love Our Neighbors, Our Bodies, and Ourselves. She talks about how the first sin is dealing with food, and that the results of that sin is body shame. Right? When Adam and Eve eat the apple and God says, "Where are you?" And they're like, "We were hiding because we were naked and ashamed." There's such a connection in religion between eating and body shame. And so how do we untangle those things?
Yeah, in Judeo-Christian religions in the
Right.
world. Yeah, definitely. And then also, I think the fact that, I mean, we know it's a parable. It's not like really how God created the world or how this happened. But if you think of the world now, that's exactly what people think. They might not tell the same story, but they look at me and they go, oh, you're fat, so you must be bad, or you must be disorganized, or you must. There are all of these assumptions people make about fat people based on the fact that we're fat.
Right. As opposed to just having natural body diversity. Stacey Bias is a creator. She's American, but she's based in the UK and Scotland. She has this amazing video called Poodle Science that she illustrated. Have you ever seen it?
No.
It's the idea that it would be absurd if we treated all dogs like poodles, because poodles have a very specific body type and a way they coif their hair. So if we just focused on making every dog look like a poodle, that would be absurd. Why do we focus on making every human body a poodle, right? Why do we focus on that instead of embracing body diversity like in trees? There's so many different kinds and widths and thicknesses of trees. The natural world really reflects this diversity of bodies. How can we embrace that in our thinking about bodies ourselves?
Yes, very important. I'm sure that's where you're going because I've read some of your work. You have so much more out there that I haven't read. When you say body diversity, yes, we're focusing on fatness, but it's not just that. It's every kind of disability, visible in particular. It's about gender diversity. It's about color and race diversity. And whatever we look like, we're all loved children of God, if we're talking religion, or just lovable in ourselves. Like there's nothing that makes us less.
Exactly. I think what you were talking about earlier, the stereotypings of fat bodies, whether we be lazy, disorganized, unhygienic, unmotivated, all of those are biases that we have against fat bodies that we have to unlearn, even when we live in a fat body. Those don't just go away when you become fat. You still have all this anti-fatness inside of you.
Because we're part of that diet culture, aren't we?
Exactly. So how do we unlearn it? That's my big push. I think all of us in Fat Liberation, we're trying to deal with unlearning the negative stereotypes and learning the truth about bodies.
Running, doing that and showing ourselves, hoping that others will learn it before we did. Because I have years of suffering that I could have not had if I'd come across these ideas earlier. And I wish others do. You have another post that you called Diet Culture is a Religion, Are You Its Disciple? To give some examples of how diet culture functions as a religion. It binds people together in a moral community around the fitness of bodies. Everyone is expected to participate in its imperatives. Going to church, the gym. Following its dietary code, dieting. Abiding by its values, the endless pursuit of thinness. And more. It even has its own mantras. Nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. And sacraments, diet and exercise. What I take from there is that we're talking about diet as a religion, which I think is a really important theme that you bring in, but even if we're not, diet culture is this belief that we culturally share and we're challenging today, that we owe ourselves thinness, and we do that through control over what we eat, calories in, calories out, exercise.
And it becomes this all-consuming endeavor, right? Where we can't even sleep without thinking about what our bodies are going to do. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but when I was dieting, I would dream that I overate, quote, overate, because my body was so hungry. It was trying to get through my psyche to tell me, you need to eat more. But I just thought I was sabotaging myself in my sleep.
I didn't remember dreams when I was younger, although now with the perimenopause, it's crazy. I remember them all. It's annoying. But I did have behaviors that I'm like genuinely not good. I got really depressed when I dieted. I would start really well, and then it got to a point when I just didn't want to eat anything because I wasn't hungry anymore, and I was crying all the time. And I'm like, that's not healthy. I'd rather eat.
Yes.
Or hiding food. So when I wasn't dieting, I wouldn't want anyone to see me eat. So I would go to uni and I would buy a chocolate and leave the wrappers in the car so my family wouldn't see that I was eating. Or a friend of mine was in hospital for like a week and she lost so much weight. And I spent like 5 years of my life really wishing I had had that illness. And that's just wrong, isn't it? It's like, really?
We long for disorder to create results. I was hospitalized for 40 days with COVID 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago. And I was on a feeding tube for 30 days and I lost a lot of weight, but I was still fat because a lot of weight from fat is still fat. A nurse, as I was getting moved out of the ICU and starting to eat again, said, "Oh my gosh, 30 days on a feeding tube. Can you imagine how much weight you could lose?" And I just kind of looked at her. I just lived through that. It was hell.
Yeah.
But she, in her capacity as a nurse, thought that was appropriate to say to someone. It's so all-encompassing that we don't even notice it.
That's the thing. It's everywhere, isn't it? I think it's a lot more for women, but it's also there for men. It's like we need to be strong and thin or muscular, but nothing that's fat. Or I hate the word fluffy, but fluffy. Or
Right.
It's very much a Western thing. It's not everywhere in the world, but for the culture we live in and the Puritan Christian view of the world, that we need to be looking a specific way. And we're buying into it all the time.
All the time. There is a sociologist, Max Weber, who talks about Protestantism and capitalism and how the Puritans took material blessing as a sign of God's favor. Our Protestant-ish puritanical culture have taken body size to reflect God's favor. If you're thin naturally, or if you're thin by hard work, you must be favored by God. And if you're fat naturally, or if you're fat just because you like to eat, and it doesn't matter why you're fat, then you are cursed by God. And so there's this hierarchy of bodies that we all think about. I had so much internalized anti-fatness
Absolutely.
that when my husband was thinner, I would look at us and say, people are going to wonder why we're matched. No one's going to think, oh, Amanda, she's got a great personality. She's really funny and smart. And they're just going to be like, why is that thin man with that fat girl? And it's so deeply entrenched. My lived experience is I was always in a larger than average body in my family. I was probably in an average body compared to the rest of the world, but larger than average for my family. And so at the age of 7, I was put on restrictive diets. And I wasn't getting enough to eat. Most people would think if you're not getting enough to eat, then you lose weight. But our bodies adapt. And it made me actually get bigger because my body thought it was in starvation mode. So I learned how to navigate hunger and prize hunger as opposed to honoring it. Prizing hunger for me means, oh, I'm hungry. That must mean I'm losing weight. Versus honoring hunger, which means I need to eat and feed my body. My eating disorder really grew out of I'm a better person when I don't eat. And it's been really challenging to get over that internal messaging. Even at the age of 40, I still feel better emotionally when I'm not eating versus having to tell myself, no, it's important to eat because I actually do feel better physically, emotionally, spiritually when I do eat.
I agree that there's that strong trying to be something we're not and all our energy going into that rather than going into just being and loving ourselves. Because I'm sure God, he, she, them loves us exactly as we are.
Indeed.
I mean, our bodies being fat will not make love not love us.
I agree completely. And I also think there is this poetic reality of fat bodies that expresses the abundance of God's creation. That it's a positive thing, like overflowing, packed down, spilling over the edges. Like that is God's provision.
What reminded me of, I don't know if you've ever seen any Botero.
Absolutely.
That's just, for those who have never, he makes these sculptures of very round people. they're not typically fat, they're just round and beautiful.
Yes.
And I think that was one of my first experiences of seeing big bodies, because it's not a fat body really, but
Right,
big
they're
bodies as
stylized.
something positive and beautiful. One thing that for me has been really difficult is to change my gaze as well, because I was taught so much that fat was bad and fat was ugly, that for a long time, looking at myself, but also looking at other fat people, I could not see past that belief.
Right.
And now I can see me and I can see other fat people and go, you're beautiful. Fatness doesn't take that away. Or we're ugly, whatever, because we could be thin and ugly as well.
Right.
But it doesn't have to do with our size.
Yes. And I think when I'm helping people come out of diet culture, I encourage them to diversify their viewing habits. So if, for example, their Instagram algorithm is all thin-bodied people, I say you really need to follow fat creators who are doing interesting things, who are making podcasts like you are, who are doing fashion, who are just documenting life in fat bodies. My tastes changed from wanting everything to be thin to being like, oh, I see this fat person has style. I want to be like that.
And then the importance of representation, isn't it?
Yes.
Because again, and I'm going back to the theme that we're talking about today, but when we're thinking even about religion, and particularly in terms of Christian religions, we also have very ridiculous ways of portraying Jesus or portraying saints. Like they all look the same, and they're probably very unlikely to be how they really look like.
Yes. So I have 3 fat saints that I love.
Oh, I don't know of any. You'll have to send me links.
Thomas Aquinas, doctor of the church, very well respected,
Yeah.
is described as being as fat as an ox. Like he's a very big man. They had to cut away part of his table for him to be able to sit to write. It was ridiculed instead of honored, but Thomas Aquinas is probably the most respected theologian in the Catholic Church. He is very fat. And then Saint Teresa of Avila,
She's fat too.
she was fat.
Whoa.
There's a Rembrandt, I believe, painting of her based on an image of her near her death, and she lives in a larger body. All we know is the Bernini, Teresa in the alleyway looking all svelte and very thin as in her younger years, which she may have been, but in her older years she was chubby and fat. And then St. John the 23rd, he was a pope who started Vatican II, and he was jolly and very large. St. Nicholas is also...
Yeah, I was thinking, when you were saying jolly, I went like, oh, Santa Claus.
Santa
It's the
Claus.
only fat person that we have representation for.
Yes, and so a 4th fat saint is St. Nicholas, embracing his fat body as just part of who he is.
And actually, with women, there's very little representation. But now you've said that, I'm thinking, Mrs. Santa.
Mrs. Santa, indeed. And who knows, all of the people in history who would be considered saints if we knew what they did, I'm guessing a lot of them would be fat as well.
And representation has changed because there's many books on this, and I keep talking about
Sabrina String, Fearing the Black Body.
Yeah, which again gets to that story of in the past, bigger body would have been represented and would have been considered beautiful. So there's a history to what we believe now.
Yes.
And actually, I don't know if you've seen this, but I will find the video because I think it's hilarious. There's a British researcher. She's a mathematician and she's super popular. And she's just put a video out showing that the Victorian representation of the really thin waist is not real. And it was like an illusion in terms of dress. But also they actually retouched the photos.
Really?
Yeah, that needs to be shared with the world because it's such a good video. So yeah, so this has happened throughout times. It's not just now. There's so many things in history that have been hidden in what our current beliefs are. And I suppose when we grew up, particularly me, but we don't have that many years difference. Again, it was ridiculous. Like a size 8 was considered fat.
It's so absurd.
Can I read something else?
Please.
You wrote another entry that says my fat vocation, and that links to what we were saying before we met, that diet culture and this religion does not lead to happiness. And I don't think it leads to happiness even for thin people, because everyone's just worried all the time about what we eat, how we look like, and it's just not healthy. You wrote, I am fat and disabled, among other things, being white, female, educated, and privileged. These two traits mediate how I see and experience the world. In my life, I have had huge dreams of changing the world, making it more just and kind and inclusive. These huge dreams usually involve me in perfect fitness and health and ability, though. So, what do I make of my vocation and my weakness? And then you continue. But in my fatness and my disability, I can see the margins better than my thin and able bodied peers. I can feel the pain of rejection because of my body. I can feel the isolation of being left out due to my disability. And I can use my voice and whatever platform I have to speak out against these injustices. I really love that because I've named this season of the podcast Happiness at Every Size. And to me, happiness is not necessarily about being in laughter or in joy all the time, or it depends on the definition of joy, but it's about knowing that we're doing what we're here to do and supporting others, and exactly what you wrote there. So I really love that.
Yeah, I was taking a class on vocation when I wrote that piece. I was in a doctoral program where I was studying leadership in higher education, and I was learning how to help students through vocational questions. And I realized while I was in that class, I don't think this is the program for me. I discerned out of the program, which I don't think was their goal, but God works in mysterious ways. Just to embrace that call as a woman priest, I feel called specifically as a disabled fat woman to be a priest, to bring that picture of weakness to the forefront in front of the people where I'm sharing and breaking the bread of the Eucharist. Strength is not where our solutions lie. It's weakness. We have to embrace our weakness in order to access wisdom and to be able to see the world through what I call fat privilege. Being on the margins, seeing where I have been left behind makes me wonder, okay, who else has been left behind with me? And how can we have a world that includes all of us?
What are your hopes in reaching whatever happiness means to you?
There's a theologian named Henry Nouwen, a Dutch theologian who spent a lot of his time in the US and Canada. And he wrote a book called Life of the Beloved. I think you would love it. He's explaining how God loves us. But he says, just like Jesus chooses the bread, blesses the bread, breaks the bread, and gives the bread, so are we called to be chosen, blessed, broken, and given. And so I am seeing my life, my hope is that I stand firm in my chosenness by God. God has chosen each person for a specific thing, to be blessed, given gifts and favor and joy. And in that comes brokenness, whether it's through my physical disability or my emotional situations that break me. But the goal is so that I can be given to the world as a sign of hope and a sign of healing and inclusion. Out of that brokenness, to be given, to be able to give and to speak healing to other people, that's really my hope.
What I would add in terms of my personal experience is that to me, it's keeping on that hope and also recognizing that nothing needs to change for me to be fully me.
Absolutely.
So I can hope for better, especially for the world, because I think the world's mad at the moment. And however, if nothing changes, if today is all I have, with pain, because I'm in massive pain for a few months now, with the body I have, with the messy family and messy home I have, then it would be okay. And that to me is a massive thing, because I've been depressed so many times in my life, and I'm like, oh, I'm not. That's genuinely not depressed. And I hope people can find those times, but it's also fine. Sometimes we will be depressed. And that's part of life. So to me, also, happiness has to do with acceptance, and it has to do with recognizing that we don't have to do anything to be valuable. We don't
Absolutely.
have to look anything to be valuable. We don't have to achieve. We don't have to nothing. We're valuable because we are. And I think that's been, to me, the teaching of the church that's been hardest for me to learn.
That's connected with probably the main mantra of my life or touchstone of my life. The purpose of my body is not thinness. It's not perfection. It's not ability. The purpose of my body is relationship with myself, with others, and with the divine. And just being, not doing, but being is enough in those relationships.
Oh my God, I love that. I think that's where this podcast is going to end.
I hope you loved this conversation as much as I did. It was so interesting and so deep. If you want to find Amanda, you can find her at her website, thefatdispatch.com, on Instagram or Threads at thefatdispatch. She writes a Substack, The Fat Dispatch. You can find her books wherever books are sold online. I will put this on the show notes so you can find them there. If you want to find me, I am on my website, thepsychologist.com. I am also on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and Blue Sky at The Fat Psychologist. Please like, share, comment, get in touch. I would love to continue building our community. If you'd like to be a guest on my podcast, do contact me. I want many voices to be heard. I am actively looking for sponsors, so if you are someone who can sponsor, or you know someone who might be interested, do please get in touch. I look forward to next week and being there again together. This episode of the Fat Psychologist podcast was produced, edited, and presented by